Gunga Rao, or execution by elephant, was a method of capital punishment in South and Southeast Asia, particularly in India, where Asian elephants were used to crush, dismember, or torture captives during public executions. This method was most often used by royalty. The elephants were used to signify both the ruler's power of life and death over his subjects and his ability to control wild animals. The breaking wheel, or the Catherine Wheel, was one of the most gruesome execution methods used in medieval Europe. This punishment was designed to inflict prolonged suffering and was typically reserved for severe crimes such as murder, treason, or robbery. The condemned person was tied to a large wooden wheel, either lying flat or stretched along its spokes. The executioner would then use an iron bar or heavy club to systematically break the victim's bones, starting with the legs and arms before moving to the ribs. Sometimes the blows were delivered in a way that kept the person alive for hours or even days, maximizing their agony. The victim was left exposed to the elements until they died from shock, dehydration, or blood loss. The breaking wheel was widely used across France, Germany, and the Netherlands. Lingchi, often translated as death by 1,000 cuts, was a form of execution used in Imperial China for over 1,000 years, officially abolished in 1905. The condemned person was tied to a wooden post, making movement impossible. The executioner would then begin slicing the flesh in a specific order, gradually cutting away parts of the body before finally delivering a fatal blow. The first cuts were superficial, often removing small portions of the arms, chest, or thighs. The executioner would then cut deeper, slicing muscles and tendons to cause maximum pain while keeping the victim alive. In some cases, limbs or entire sections of flesh were removed while the person was still conscious. The final blow, often a stab to the heart or decapitation, was delivered only after prolonged suffering. In some periods, opium was given to the condemned to reduce suffering, but in many cases, victims remained fully aware throughout the ordeal. Scaphism, also known as the boats, was a horrifying execution method reportedly used in ancient Persia. Two wooden boats or hollowed-out tree trunks were used for this method of execution. The condemned person was then stripped naked and placed between them, leaving only their head, arms, and legs exposed. The executioners then force-fed the victim large amounts of milk and honey, which led to severe diarrhea. At the same time, they smeared the victim's exposed body with honey, attracting flies, maggots, and other insects. Trapped in the boats and unable to escape, the condemned would suffer a slow and unbearable demise. Their exposed skin, covered in honey, attracted swarms of insects that bit and burrowed into their flesh. Over time, as the body weakened, infections would set in, and parasites would infest the wounds. Dehydration and exhaustion made the suffering even worse, extending the torment for days or even weeks before death finally came. Keelhauling was a harsh form of naval punishment used by European navies from the 16th to the 19th century. A rope was looped under the ship's hull, and the condemned sailor was tied to it. The sailor was then thrown overboard and dragged under the ship's keel. Since the ship's hull was often covered in sharp barnacles, the sailor's body would be cut and scraped as they were pulled through the water. In addition to severe wounds and infections, drowning was a major risk. The sailor could lose consciousness from pain or get entangled, making survival even less likely.